Everybody, and welcome to yet another edition of the Middle Georgia Spotlight. I'm your host, Jack Ellis. Glad to have you with us. And we've been doing not a series, but we've been reaching out to the faith community as we grapple with the problems that's going on in our community, especially just as we are moving into the season that we celebrate Dr. King's birthday and we're moving into Black History Month. Not a better time to take a check, if you will, of the black community. Where are we spiritually, emotionally, and we've been trying to ask men of the cloth who are deal with this on a daily basis, especially when it comes to our spiritual well-being. And making this possible, our sponsors, Caduceus Medicine, J. Franklin Automotives, and of course, Goggles Eye Care, Midtown Eye Care here in Macon. In the spotlight this week to help us along this journey is Pastor David Blackshear. Daniel, I'm sorry, but I got to put my glasses on, you know, V-A looking like a Daniel Blackshear, who is the pastor of Word and Deed Church here in Macon, Georgia. And he's been there for 6 years here on Mercer University. So we've asked him to join us, and we put him in the spotlight this week. Pastor Daniel Blackshear, welcome to our program.
Glad to be here. Yeah. Glad to be here.
Well, you know, you obviously appearances can be wrong, but just looking at you, I haven't asked you how old you are. But you look like a very young man, but you've been laboring as a pastor for 6 years.
Yes,
So evidently you were what we call one of these child pastors that Reverend Al Sharpton said he was, preacher. But on a serious note, the black church has been under attack literally and figuratively, starting in Charleston and some other things where the black church is having to grapple with, the black church is having to maybe make resources available during the Great Recession because its members didn't have, and on, and it has been there. But what are the biggest challenges right now, in your opinion, that the African-American black church, whatever you want to call it, faces, not only in our community, but universal, if you will, if you care to speak to the universality of it, but definitely we want to talk about what's happening here at Macon.
In my experience and what I have been seeing, one of the biggest challenges that I see that the church is facing is really a moral decline. And what I mean by that is, as a Christian church, Jesus Christ is our founder, and he gives explicit teachings on how we should live. And what I am encountering is a lot of sermons, but not a whole lot of teachings on what Jesus taught. And if a Christian who is a follower of Jesus Christ holds fast to the teachings of Jesus, a lot of problems that exist wouldn't be so explicit and so broad in our community. Jesus taught against adultery. He teaches us not to steal. He taught not to bear false witness. And even his apostles, even Apostle Paul, picked it up and said, don't be lovers of yourselves. Don't be prideful. Don't be egotistical. Don't be arrogant. And if we hold true to the teachings that Jesus Christ set for his church, there's a lot of problems that wouldn't be persistent. And if we hold fast to those teachings, we would rear our children in those teachings. Our children would not be influenced by people who have teachings aside from Christ if we held true to our true Christianity.
So, in other words, we would love mercy, we would do the things.
Love mercy, love truth, not bear false witness, walk in righteousness, not in trying to run a Ponzi scheme, not trying to steal every dollar you can because you do have a good product. We would be honest, have fair wages. The world would be a much better place if true Christianity was to come to the front. And true Christianity, Jesus was taught preaching. He was called preaching, as well as teaching the word of God. Preaching is very vital, but teaching is also very vital. That's why we're here near Mercer University right now, which is a teaching institution. And when you're taught right, you're able to thrive in your profession. Doctors have to be taught. Lawyers have to be taught. Physicians have to be taught. And once they are taught properly, they're able to thrive in their profession. So if we can teach Christianity the right way, maybe we can have some thriving Christians and our community would be better.
Well, you mentioned Mercer University. Not only are we at Mercer, near Mercer, we are at Mercer. Mercer owns the station that we are broadcasting, and we are taping here, WMUB, Channel 38 over the air, and Channel 112 on Cox Cable here in Macon. And we always like to thank them for giving us this opportunity to communicate with the masses. But, you know, I listen to a lot of Dr. King's speeches during this time of year. Sometimes I listen to him throughout the year to get inspiration. But I was listening to one just recently, his last one, not his last one. The last one was on the mountaintop in Memphis. But the last one, he gave a formal one that he gave, where do we go from here? Where he gave an update as
Community
to what
or chaos,
Yeah, but when he gave that speech, of course, you read the book and listen to the speech, it's an entirely different thing. And he said what you were saying, that basically this whole thing about spirituality, that if we call ourselves Christian, and of course the Southern Christian Leadership Conference was, that if we would do that, we could, and especially he was calling upon the white church, as he did from the Birmingham jail, to really live out to the true meaning of Christianity. But can we get there without having all, we have a church on every community, every corner and church, street corner in Macon. So as the African American church,
yes, sir.
And there's a distinction. I had Pastor Stanley on. He says a distinction that because he pointed out from a political standpoint, and he's right. He said majority of the black Christians in Macon, Georgia, are Democrats. The majority of the white Christians in Macon are Republicans. So can we bridge the divide and the spirit realm with Christianity and still be, as like George Washington, Booker T. Washington said, be as separate as we can when it comes to politics?
Well, here's what the Christian Bible teaches. The Christian Bible, as we read it, there's a passage of scripture where God is speaking to his people, and he says, come out of her, my people. Apostle Paul talks about the works and the deeds of the flesh. There are some things that are after the flesh, and there are some things that are after the spirit. And he said, if you walk in the spirit, you will not fulfill the lust of the flesh. In other words, if I live my life God consciously, and I live my life according as my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ has instructed me to live, I don't care whether you're Asian, Democrat, Republican, from Swahili, New Zealand. Jesus Christ and the spirit of his church is a universal spirit. And when he created his church, he said, I want all men to come. But we only come under one purpose and one goal, and that is to do the will of the Father. Now,
on earth.
On earth.
Yeah,
now,
because what Dr. King is saying, we talk about over yonder by and by, but we want, as black people, we want to enjoy some of the fruits as we move through on our way to there, wherever eternal life, wherever we're headed.
Yes.
So from that perspective, what role does the black church have to make sure that resources in the community are fed out equally, and income inequality, criminal justice, where we see maybe the no justice, no peace, and Dr. King spoke, the first one that uttered those words, no justice, no peace.
Yes.
What role does the black church have when it comes in that arena?
Here would be my perspective on that. And my perspective is, when one is in line with God, there's something that I've always paid attention to when picking up the Bible in my prayer life. Jesus always knew the devil when he came. Even when evil spirits hid in people, it did not fool Jesus. And when a person attains true spirituality, he knows where to walk, how to walk, who to make deals with, who to stay away from, because we walk according to the spirit, not according to what I hear you say, not according to a person's status quo, not according to the flattery words of people that make bargains with us. We live according and we judge things by spiritual nature. So it wouldn't matter if I invented something that was great and I invented something that could potentially gross $1 billion. When people come to me and they say, hey, let's buy a product, let's partner, let's do this, let's make this happen. And they take what I have out from the place that I might initially wanted it to rest and take it all over the world, take it globally, take resources from my community, it wouldn't really, if I'm judging things according to the Spirit, I'm not followed by money. I'm not changed by all these other things. I'm living my life according to the way Christ has intended for us to live.
But we live in a consumer-oriented society. So people got to have resources in order to take care of this body that lives.
Yes.
I mean, this thing, the spirit that lives, that it's body, that spirit that lives in the body that possesses a soul.
Yes.
While it's here on earth.
Yes.
So I think what Dr. King, and I can't quote him exactly, what he was saying is that the African American church in those days, and we still do, we have a great responsibility, and we do a lot of things beyond what the average church do. But we have to do it because if we're going to deal with the uplifting of a people,
Yes.
and people that we shepherd, I guess your congregation, I don't know, predominantly African American.
Yes, sir. Yes,
okay,
sir.
so then there was some experience there, and how do you address those needs, the needs of your, beyond the spiritual needs, but definitely the spiritual needs, but how the other needs that they maybe have coming after them on a daily basis, income inequality, inadequate transportation, maybe a school system that's failing their children. What role does the church have in that involvement, I guess? And I'm not going to let you get away without answering that question.
All right. It is my belief that right thinking leads to right actions. And every action has a consequence to it. And when thinking is proper and is in tune and is right, it leads to right actions. In other words, if I am raising children, talk about the school system, one of the first commandments, honor your mother and father, that it may be well with you. Well, I understand if I have a Christian home and I'm raising Christian children, the first thing I have to teach them is honor and respect. So by the time the teacher gets my child, they don't have to worry about my child cussing them back out. They don't worry about my child, if you tell them to sit down, they stand up. Well, that's what's one of the first things I teach. The second thing I teach is when you deal with Christ, Christ is progressive. In other words, Christ will find a man in one state. Once his spirituality gets right, once his thinking gets right, once his mind gets right, once he get on one path with God, those men's lives always elevate further past than they can ever possibly imagine. So I teach a person, first of all, you have to know yourself. I want to stop there. You have to have history of yourself. Those are your roots.
And Dr. King commanded us to do that. Look deep inside of us. Be proud, for not only know yourself, but be proud of what you find once you know yourself.
Yes, you have to know yourself and know your roots. And this might be off on the side, but I want to say this. I've been watching Paternity Court on Roku TV. And one of the main things that those children suffer with is not knowing who their father is. It is very important for children to have a relationship with their father.
No question. And that is, let me tell you something. That is new to the Negro in this country, not in Africa. Maybe there's polygamy. Maybe a brother has 4 or 5 wives, but the children all know each other. There's no such thing as outside children. If a child is here, he's claimed by the father, the mother knows, and they know who they're, and they grow up knowing that. So we have this thing over here that the animalistic thing, too much has happened in our community. We are fathering children just walking off, not caring or not knowing whether they're taken care of. But I wanted to share that. I spent a lot of time in Africa. That's one thing I admire about Africa and Africans. No matter their station in life, they could be so poor. They could have 4 or 5 wives, but all of those children will know each other.
That is one of the main issues that I see plaguing the African American community. You have to own, claim, teach, train, and stand in the gap for your child. Because what happens is the child is here.
I'm not suggesting people go have 4 or 5 wives.
But what happens, the child is here. And there's a lot of rearing that a child has to have. And what happens is the responsibility is always going to fall on others. But in my counseling classes, they teach us that the child will always long for a relationship with the biological father. And so as a Christian, this is one of the teachings. You don't run off and leave your children.
No.
You don't run off and leave your family. And there are many scriptures that talks about how a father is supposed to instruct his child. And if the father is not there, if he's passed on, if he has brothers, uncles, you're supposed to grab these children. But the problem is nobody is doing it God's way. And we get mad with these devilish results that we keep finding.
Maybe some don't even know that they have a nephew. The uncle is not even aware until the funeral. I didn't even know you were existed.
Yes, I've seen that a lot.
And so much of that's going on.
And far as getting them to progress, one thing that the Bible teaches on money, and it teaches on, making yourself more broad and making yourself more economical, because it's impossible to be the head and not the tail, and be the lender and not the borrower when you don't have anything to lend and you don't have anything that would qualify you to be the head.
To what you were just saying, and both of those things, I'm going to quote Dr. King when he was speaking before in 1962, 63, speaking before a junior high school class in Philadelphia, challenging them to learn what you just said about learning and about wealth and making money. He said, learn, baby, learn, so you can earn, baby, earn.
I like that.
So this is what we're still saying is that, so we've got to get young people, not only in our churches, but in our communities where our church reside, in my opinion, and I'm editorializing here, and I should be asking you a question, to see the connectivity between spiritual growth, social, and economic well-being, that there's a connectivity.
And listen to what Jesus said about learning. He said, take my yoke upon you and learn of me. Live your life in such a way where you're always increasing yourself every day. Live your life in such a way.
We in Macon, a city that's 55% people of African descent, I don't know whether everybody want to call themselves an African American, because some people that's calling themselves an African American and not acting anything like an African. But we're 55% of the population in the city and county, and that's not taken into account that the Census Bureau automatically puts a 5.6, almost 6% undercount in the black community. So we're probably talking about, if we use that formula, we're about 60% of the population. Yet we control very little of the economic growth in our communities, are deteriorating where our churches and where our people are living. What role does the church have? Should churches come together to demand more services in these communities? Or if they can't get a store to come, should they get together and have a cooperative, to build a store, have a credit union, have a senior citizen tower, or whatever people? Is that out of the realm of possibilities for the Christian church in this town?
That is definitely not out of the realm of possibilities for churches in this town. In this town, what I've noticed is people love churches.
And not church of chicken, you're talking the church. Church. They do.
They love.
And they love their pastors too, for the most part.
They love their pastors, and I love mine. I understand why. But they love building churches. I have no idea, and it behooves me, why anybody would just want to just pop up one day and say, hey, I want to be, I don't know whether they love attention, they love to be seen, I don't know what it is. But if you're really trying to build a people, and you're really trying to make people better, which is the job of every Christian preacher, if you're really trying to do that, you're going to teach them business, and you're going to teach them not to be a beggar and be self-sufficient. Anytime you have to beg for everything you get, you're still in slavery. Master got to feed you. Master got to clothe you. Master got to give you a place to stay. Master lets you know how much you can eat at a certain time. That's not freedom. That's slavery by another name. And I cannot remember the author right offhand, but he said, by what other name will they call this old beast? I don't know if I'm quoting him right, but he said it's going to come by another name. So when I approached the congregation, me being a Christian preacher, the gospel message is unbiased. But when I look at the social status of a group of people, Jesus always looked out for those who could not look out for themselves. And he was very explicit about the powers that be controlling, manipulating, and deceiving people to living beneath their means. And even when they crucified Jesus, the Pharisees and Sadducees said, Jesus has a great following. And if people start following Jesus, we're going to lose our power with the Roman government. So the best thing for us to do is get rid of this Jesus. Jesus was aware of how political parties and political powers played on people. So what he did, he built up the people that were around him. And when he built up the people that were around him, they became free in their thinking and free in their expression towards God. And that's what caused them to live a free life.
Well, I'm not going to quote Bible verse with you because you have been called. So you're saying that the people that building all these churches, you're not suggesting that some just went and some was sent and some just went.
You get me in trouble now.
No. But the government's role when in the lives of people, granted, we should do all we can for ourselves.
Yes.
And as Dr. King said, you can't ask a bootless man to pull himself up by his bootstraps. He's first got to have some boots.
Yes, sir.
And in our community, we have a lot of people living in some very horrible conditions. And the government, I think, has a responsibility. So I think here again, and my question would be to faith community, what pressures are you bringing to bear on the local government or state government to have this partnership, to make sure that resources are distributed equally in the community, that the taxes that everyone pays to buy on when they shop grocery store, that it's coming back in the community and reinvestment. Because let me tell you what's happening right now in the African American community in this town. Not to tell you, but to share with you. See, we can talk about a lot of facts, all of us, but the truth of the matter as to why these facts are so. The fact is, black household income is lower than any other group in the city of Macon. The fact is that the equity that's in the African American community in their homes is lower and continue to be lower than any other place in the community. We are 10 years removed right now from the Great Recession, and they said that most houses were back above water now, 10 years on. And if you live in a certain neighborhood, you have equity. But if you live in the inner city, in the African American community in this city, your value of your house is still underwater and suppressed. So what the equity that you thought you had, or you had in 2008, 2009, has been evaporated, and it has not come back, and it continues to go south. So the largest transfer of wealth has taken place since 2009 in the African American community, the largest transfer of wealth from the African American community elsewhere since slavery. The largest, but economists will tell you that. So we have to come to grips with that. That's a fact.
That's a fact.
But now the truth is, what are we going to do about that? And how do we address it, especially when we have the tax assessors telling people their houses are worth X, Y, Z, and they're paying tax on it, at least 40% of the assessed value, and they think their house is worth $100,000, but when they try to sell it in certain neighborhoods, the highest appraisal they can get is $45,000, so they thought they had equity that they don't have, and that's a major problem that's happening. And so here again, once the preachers and the ministers are aware of that thing that's happening in the community, what role, if any, will they have to tell old Caesar, if you will?
I want to say this on this wise. Preachers are not filthy rich.
No, they're not, but they're independent for the most part.
They're independent, but I want to say this. In Macon, Georgia, there are a lot of black people that make a lot of good money. But the only problem is
a lot of them not making a lot of money. We have 44% of our children living in poverty in the city.
That is true. But there are some African Americans that do pretty good.
Oh, yes, some of them are. And we commend them. We want them to do better.
And the reality,
we want them to do good back in the community where they come from too.
The reality of it is that once they make their I'm throwing out $100,000 a year, just one parent. Well, the problem is Mr. Louboutin sees most of that money. Mr. Gucci sees a lot of that money. Mr. Mercedes payments are killing me.
he
sees a lot of it. And if you ask the person, why did you buy this with your money instead of doing that with your money? Well, most of the time, it has a lot to do with the egotistical and the pride of a man. So, and what I've been noticing in this city, the people that could help, they take their resources and go other places. Then they come to the church saying, won't you do something? Well, you made $250,000 last year. How many bicycles did you buy for Christmas?
How much tithes did you pay?
And I hate to say it, but a lot of those people, they're still giving $1 and they're expecting the church to do this great thing. And when you look at the Eurocentric churches here, you know, they take care of their churches pretty well, and that's why they're able to go out and do
missions,
and a lot of missions and own properties. And even when I look at black churches in Atlanta, those people make money, but they pour back into their churches. That's why churches was able to go buy up downtown and start their own schools and things like that. And to get back to how do we keep that, churches are going to have to come together on a unified joint effort, because all of us are one body. And we're going to have to come together and put our resources together and say, how are we going to help the people in Macon, Georgia rise out? Because we understand that the school systems are failing. The children can't read. We already know that's headed. We have millions of examples that point to the fact that when things are not in place, you already know the outcome. I know if I leave a bag of popcorn in the microwave for too long, eventually the house is going to start smoking. And we already aware of this. And the reason that the role that the church plays in Macon, Georgia, because in this city alone, there are a lot of bad things, but if you got 5 kids and you're not taking care of the 5, I can't support you when you're going to make 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah.
Now, if you already got 4 kids and 3 of those dads, you don't have a clue who they are. We're going to have to teach you some moral responsibility, because even though you might not
tough love.
Yes, even though you might not be paying for those kids, somebody is.
And it's harming the children as well. They're
yes.
being harmed. We're out of time, Pastor, but you've shared a lot with us, food for thought here, okay. and now hopefully that we can all work on this collaboratively. All
yes,
the churches
yes, we have to come together.
The last one you talked about, financial literacy, very, very important.
Yes, very important.
Living within your means.
Yes.
Respecting what you do have, and don't try to be something that you're not. Live within your means.
Yes.
Pastor, we've been talking with Pastor Daniel Blackshear.
Yes, sir. Yes,
the
sir.
late Blackshear. He told me to make sure I remember that. Daniel Blackshear, who is the head pastor, senior pastor, I guess you would call it, and that is the Word Indeed.
Word Indeed Ministries.
Word
yes,
Indeed
sir.
Ministries on Mercer University
Drive.
Here
yes,
in Macon, and you meet at 9:30 a.m.
every Sunday morning.
And everyone is welcome.
Yes,
come as you are.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us, Pastor.
Glad to be here.
I appreciate you, and may God continue to bless you and
yes.
bless your ministry,
yes,
and
sir.
continue to speak truth to power.
Yes, sir.
We've been speaking with here again, Daniel Blackshear, senior pastor at Word Indeed Baptist Ministries here in Macon. I wanted to say Baptist Church. There are a lot of Baptist churches around, but we want to thank you all so much for joining us this week here on the Mills, Georgia Spotlight. Until your host, Jack. My God, I can't even say goodbye. Until next week. Goodbye, everybody.